Alright, welcome back. Last time we saw a little bit of if-else stuff. Well, actually we didn't see the else yet. But we saw some if and some conditional statements. So let's go ahead and continue and look a little bit at loops. So here we have x equals 10, y equals 30. We're just assigning some numbers to some variables. In this part right here, we're saying if, and then in front of the if, we have a parentheses around a conditional statement. And now this can be a single conditional statement. It can be compound like we saw last time. So if x is less than or greater than 20 and say y is less than 100. But anything inside these parentheses is our conditional statement. If whatever's in the parentheses evaluates to true, we'll enter this block immediately after the if. It starts with the curly brace there and ends with that curly brace there. Now, for a single statement like this is just one statement, x plus plus, statement ends with a semicolon, just does one thing. It's sort of like right here, this is a single statement, this is a single statement. We can put a ton of statements in this block of code, and then basically if we do enter it, if this is true, we'll hop in here, all this will get executed. If this is not true, however, we go down to the else clauses. So if this, nope, else whatever. So else if x is greater than 5. And actually x is 10 here, so this would be false, and we'd skip that. We'd go down to the else if x is greater than 5, that's actually true, so we actually would enter this block, and we would execute every statement in between these two curly braces. Once we did that, we would actually skip this else because we've already done something here. We're not going for an else whatever, not going for another option. If x was not greater than 5 though, say if x was 3, then we'd hit this conditional, false. Else if this conditional, false. And then it would come down to this last else, just kind of a catch-all. If none of this was true above, then we do this, and everything inside this block of code gets executed. Single, like I was going to say earlier, single conditional or single statement blocks can actually be reduced to a single line. So this is basically the same thing as before. If x is greater than 20, x plus plus. Else if x is greater than 5, do this. The problem here is if I put another statement here like, oh yeah, I also want to add one to y right here, so y plus plus, this is going to break because this right here after the if whatever, then x plus plus is one thing. This is one statement basically. And then because C doesn't really format, there's no formatting, it's just blocks and everything. This is its own thing. So it would say if that, whatever, if not, it doesn't matter. We go to the next statement. And then it's saying else, but this doesn't tie to anything because there's a broken if right here by this other statement. So if you want this inside the block, you would have to go ahead and surround the whole thing by braces. So a lot of times you won't see single blocks or single statements alone like that, like this. You probably won't see that too much, but you can. And you can also see it like this because white space doesn't really matter. The blocks are enclosed in curly braces, blocks of code. In fact, you can actually do things like this, y plus plus, do multiple statements on one line. Statements all end with semicolons and blocks are all surrounded by curly braces. In fact, you could even just tighten your code down to nothing. It would soon become unreadable, but the compiler just goes across and it looks for the important things. It doesn't care about white space. So all of this will kind of work the way that it is. But yeah, that's that. So you have if, else if, and else. And one way to actually think of this else if and else is you're saying else, you're opening a new block right here, whoops, and this is an else to that if. So basically every following else if is just a nested statement. So if this isn't true, and then, okay, we go down to this else. If this isn't true, okay, then we go down to this else, and so on. So just play around with ifs and elses, get a handle for all that. There are also loops. So this is just going to say while this condition is true, go ahead and execute this. And so what'll happen is it'll come down to this, it'll hit it for the first time. Is x less than y? Yes, it is. So it'll go into the body of the loop. It'll do these things, add 1 to x, add 1 to count, and then it'll come back to the top of the loop while x is less than y, and so it'll look at it again. Now x is 11. Is x less than y? Yeah. It'll go in, and it'll keep doing this until this is false. Once it's false, it'll just skip the loop completely. It'll hop right down to the print, and then it'll print our count right here. So if you want to write up something like this, play around with it, look at the while loop, and basically play with maybe multiple statements in here, do like or, x is greater than 15, stuff like that, and basically get used to how loops work and how conditional things can work within ifs, elses, and while loops. We'll look at for loops and some arrays and some cool stuff we can do with loops in the next video.